Bobby's heart was pounding in his chest as he watched the figure in the distance. He tried to swallow, but his throat was dry. He had been looking out the window, watching the lightning when he saw it. At first, he thought it was just another shadow from the storm, but as it got closer, he realized it was something else. The figure was massive, easily twice the size of a man. It lumbered towards him, bathed in an eerie light from the lightning flashes. Bobby tried to scream, but no sound came out. He could feel himself trembling, but he couldn't move. The figure was getting closer and closer, and then suddenly, there was a crash of thunder and the figure disappeared into the darkness. Bobby let out a breath that he didn't realize he had been holding and staggered backward until he hit the wall behind him. He stayed there for a long time, until finally his fear began to fade and rational thought returned. It must have been just a tree or something else caught in the headlights of a car driving by. There was nothing to be afraid of. But even as he tried to convince himself of that, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something out there in the darkness, watching him. He decided to turn on the TV and maybe find a funny show to watch that would get his mind off whatever it was he thought he had seen. As he turned on the TV, he noticed his hands were still shaking. He thought he'd pour himself a drink, maybe that would take the edge off. He got up from the couch slowly, feeling like he was being watched. He turned around quickly, half expecting to see the figure from before, but there was nothing there. Just the flashes of lightning and rain pelting the window. He opened the kitchen cabinet, took out the bottle of bourbon, and poured a glass. He sipped and could hear some laughter coming from the TV. The warmth of the bourbon going down and sounds from the TV were already relieving some of the tension and fear. He felt sure that what he saw was nothing more than tricks of the lights and shadows outside. But even so, he couldn't help but feel like something was still out there, waiting for him. He turned off the TV, then went upstairs to bed, bourbon in hand. As he got into bed, he thought he saw a movement outside his window. He quickly turned off the light and pulled the covers up to his chin, heart racing. He told himself it was just the branches from the tree outside moving in the wind. He lay there wide awake for a long time, and as he was just about to go to sleep he heard it. A deep rumbling growl. His eyes immediately snapped open. Had that growl he heard been real, or had he been dreaming it and the fear of it woke him up? He didn't know for sure. He was afraid to find out, but knew he would never get to sleep if he didn't find out. He slowly got out of bed, heart pounding, and cautiously made his way to the window. He slowly pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. And there it was. The massive figure from before was standing outside his house, bathed in the eerie light of the lightning flashes. Bobby's heart skipped a beat as he stared at it, frozen in fear. The figure's head snapped up to look directly at Bobby. An extra long lightning strike fully illuminated the thing. And Bobby saw that it wasn't just a massive figure, it was some kind of monster. It had long claws, razor-sharp teeth, and glowing red eyes. Bobby let out a scream as he stumbled backward and fell to the floor. The growl came again, but this time most definitely from inside his house. Bobby scrambled to his feet and ran for the door, but it was too late. The monster was already inside. He could hear it coming up the stairs after him, and he knew he was going to die. He slammed the door and pushed his dresser in front of it just as the monster reached it. He could hear it scratching and clawing at the door, trying to get to him. He backed up until he was pressed against the wall opposite the door, heart racing, knowing there was no way out. The monster was going to kill him and there was nothing he could do about it. Suddenly, the power went out and everything was plunged into darkness. He thought he could jump out the window. He was on the second floor and would probably get hurt falling that far, but it would be better than what that thing was going to do to him if he stayed in here. He turned to make a run for the window but felt something wrap around his leg and yank him backward. He screamed as he felt teeth sink into his flesh, and then everything went black. He woke up to the sound of rain pelting his window. He was disoriented and confused for a moment, wondering why he was in his room. Then he remembered what happened and it all came rushing back to him. The monster, the teeth sinking into his leg, the darkness. He tried to sit up but felt a sharp pain in his leg and realized that it was injured. He couldn't remember how he had gotten away from the monster, but he was thankful that he was alive. He looked around his room, half expecting the monster to come crashing through the door at any moment, but everything was quiet. He tried to stand up but his injured leg couldn't support him and he fell back down with a grunt of pain. Then the power came back on and he could see the blood on his leg and some on the floor. He looked at the wound and saw a piece of broken glass still stuck in his leg. He carefully pulled it out and realized it was from his bourbon glass. He looked around and sure enough his broken glass was there on the floor near him. Then he realized the dresser was in its normal place, to the side of the door. Not where he had pushed it to when running from that thing, that monster. He opened the door and expected to find scratches on the outside, but there were none. He looked down the stairs and saw no monster, no evidence that anything had even happened. He must have been dreaming it, he thought to himself. But it had felt so real. He limped downstairs, using the banister for support, and went into the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when he saw the muddy footprints on the floor, leading from the back door to the stairs. There were no footprints going back out, as if whatever made them had just vanished into thin air. He knew he hadn't been dreaming, something had happened. But what was it? And where did it go? Then, the growl.